It was a busy week last week for Broncos head coach Sean Payton as he shared some insight into the team's offseason plans, including what he thinks of this year's NFL quarterback class. We'll break all that down and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country and all the everydayers out there for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day. Just a reminder, you can get this podcast for free every single day all year long on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. So if you're a brand new viewer or listener, make sure you hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team, that is the Denver Broncos. We cover them objective, every single angle you can think of here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Cody Roark. I cover the Broncos for Mile High Sports as a reporter, joined alongside, as always, by Sayre Bedinger. He's a site expert over there, predominantlyorange.com. Sayre, the aftermath of Super Bowl 58. Look, we'll dive deep into that at the end of today's show, but really the buildup all week long, I felt like there was a lot of anticipation for the matchup on Sunday, but there was Radio Row. There was the buildup to the Super Bowl. Broncos head coach Sean Payton, he made his rounds representing Zebra Technology, but he had a lot to say overall in terms of his media tour that he did about the Broncos, his thoughts on this team. He even shared his thoughts on Russell Wilson, the quarterback situation, NFL draft, free agency, and more, and kind of gave, I think, us a little bit of a blueprint and maybe a little idea and a glimpse into what the team's offseason plans exactly are.
He really did. I mean, Cody, I don't know if Sean Payton, do you think he knows the jersey numbers of any of these quarterbacks in the upcoming NFL draft? I don't know if I heard him say that line enough times, but no, that was kind of funny. We did get the canned responses. Like, he was ready to answer, all the rumors going around about us in the draft and the quarterback and trading up and all that. He's like, I don't even know the jersey numbers of these guys yet. And so, I mean, we got the canned response, but then I think we got some of the candid responses as well, to where some people did a really great job interviewing him, Cody. I think specifically like Kay Adams was able to pry some pretty good answers out of him. Rich Eisen, they had some good questions to ask Sean Payton. But really, I think one thing that he talked about that I think is worth mentioning, he said that the Broncos, they're not going to be able to kind of run it back, so to speak, in 2024, right? You can't necessarily pick up where you left off. And that's what he said. He said the idea that you're going to pick up from where we left off is all BS. That's not the case. I mean, year over year, there's just way too much turnover in the NFL to really be able to carry over momentum. I know it kind of felt like the Detroit Lions did that this year, right? It felt like they finished last season strong and they carry that in to this season, but really year over year in the NFL, that's just impossible. You have way too much change going on all over your team. And Sean Payton, I think, made that very clear that there's going to be enough change to where there's not going to really be that carryover in 2024.
I love the analogy that he made, right? He said it's like a chessboard, right? He said at the end of the year, you flip it upside down and you have all the pieces scattered out. And to your point of what he mentioned, and he said it verbatim, this idea that we're going to pick up from where we left off, that's all BS. And he said that with kind of some fire to him as well, because I think you do hear it's like, oh, the Broncos, they're just going to do this and then they're going to run it back. He's like, we're not running it back. There's so many different things that are going to have to go on with this team outside of just quarterback, right? I mean, we're talking about, and we'll get to it here in a little bit, staff changes that have been made and that are going to be made here in the next week or so, the team's plan. He said, we got to look at our own in-house free agents and figure out what our plan is there. We have to manage the salary cap. I mean, the NFL dynamic, the business side of it is very complex. And so Payton is very firm. He's like, we're not running it back. We're not staying with the status quo. Like, we have to make changes. That is evident here. And so obviously here on Monday, the Broncos are officially beginning their draft meetings here. And they're going to be 10-hour days throughout, I don't know how many, I think the next couple of weeks, and you have the combine coming up. They're going to go out there. Sean Payton is going to be out there. But what they're doing here is they're going into their meetings, and they do this every single season. It's going to be the coaching staff, Payton. It's going to be the scouts. It's going to be general manager George Payton. They're all going to sit together because they've got their roster analysis that they have. In their head, they already have an idea as to what they want to do in terms of their in-house free agents, who they want to make an offer to bring back, and who they might be targeting in that tier 2, wave 3 length of free agency here. So now the draft planning begins. What are areas that they want to build depth in? That's what George Payton gave us some insight on That's going to be very interesting. But I think so much of this too, and our wonderment and Broncos fans' wonderment about this offseason, what does that mean about Russell Wilson? Here's what Sean Payton had to say. He said it verbatim. He said regarding a decision surrounding what the team is going to do with him, that's coming sooner than later. All signs point to both sides parting ways. But I found it interesting on Super Bowl morning. Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network came out and he had said the Broncos are looking at every option, including, this came out today, reopening contract talks with Russ to bring him back in 2024. We always knew this was a possibility, but this was the first time we've had a national reporter. As we know, Pelissero, well plugged into the Broncos, George Payton, him mentioning this, I think, is a big development here as everything begins.
And it comes off the heels of Sean Payton saying, he said that Russ was open to coming back, or I saw an interview where he said Russ wants to come back. So those words came out of Sean Payton's mouth that Russell Wilson wants to come back to the Denver Broncos. And he kept saying, like, don't count that possibility out. And I know they kind of have to say that stuff. And like you mentioned, I mean, it really does feel like the writing is on the wall here. I don't necessarily think that we're going to see Russell Wilson back this year, but man, he's on the books. Like, he's under contract. $39 million the Broncos will pay Russell Wilson this year. Even with offset language in his contract, they'll probably pay him over $38 million. So they're going to be paying him this year. Maybe they'll decide, like, we want to just pay him to play for us. And that can be kind of their leverage to say, we may still go to the NFL draft. We may still go to free agency, but Russ, you're going to be on the roster because we're not just giving you away. We're not just going to cut you and let you go sign with whoever you want for $1 million and stick us with the tab. No, you can be a mentor to JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix. Like, we'll pay you to do that because at least now you'll be in the building and you're getting paid a lot of money. So the Broncos do have some leverage here, Cody. I know it seems like they don't. Like, if they want to move on from Russ, they just have to cut the cord, get rid of him. But it feels like that option is still on the table. Now, would they hold him hostage like that and not allow him to play elsewhere in 2024? That's where the plot really thickens. Very interesting timing from this report from Tom Pelissero.
I mean, what is it? We are almost here in a day or so. We're going to be officially a month out from the start of free agency, March 13th, 2:00 p.m. Mountain Time. It's going to get crazy, and we're going to find out a little bit more about the direction the Broncos are going to be headed. He had one more thing to say, because so much of the conversation, and we see this all the time in our comments, we see it on social media, there's a lot of conversation about what NFL, draft experts and everybody thinks that the Broncos should do. And Sean Payton said, look, there's the NFL van. You can't stay on it too long, and you can't listen to all the noise. You have to make decisions that are best for your team here. And there are so many people. And look, I think a lot of fans, because draft analysts provide a lot of information, they provide mock drafts. Everyone gravitates towards, well, this would be a reach at this pick. If the Broncos feel a certain way about a player, Sean Payton said it himself. He said, if we like one of these guys a lot, then I'm concerned where people think we should draft them. That's the mindset you should have, because I'm seeing a lot of, well, drafting a quarterback at 12 would be a reach. Who says it's a reach? What makes that a reach at this point? If you love a guy, and the word that we're going to go with this offseason, conviction. You have conviction about a guy, you roll with it. And that seems like the test. So I feel good about that. I want to get your quick thoughts on Payton's mindset on that about, hey, we're unconcerned where people think we should draft them.
Well, I think it could be a situation where he looks back at previous draft classes that he's had and guys that he's loved at the position to really that conviction to go up and get your guy, or at least take the guy if he's sitting there for you. He told a story to Colin Cowherd a year or so ago about Patrick Mahomes, how the Saints were ready to draft Patrick Mahomes at pick number 11 in 2017, ended up being happy with either Mahomes or Marshawn Lattimore at that slot. Didn't get aggressive. The Kansas City Chiefs did. They jumped one spot ahead. And of course, the rest is history. And Sean Payton's like, we got a good player. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He had the best draft class maybe in franchise history that year. Guys like Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, so many other players, Alex Anzalone, Trey Hendrickson. It just goes to prove, if you have conviction about a quarterback, go get the guy. Dang it. Go draft that guy.
Yeah.
You can have the best draft class in franchise history. Means absolutely nothing if you don't get the quarterback position right. So if you're convicted on a QB, Sean Payton, go get him.
Could you imagine what the course of history in the NFL would look like if the Saints had gotten Patrick Mahomes? Payton would probably still be in New Orleans. What would the Chiefs look like inside the AFC West? And where would the Broncos be if that were the case. That would be an interesting what if scenario to be able to look at maybe for a fun offseason activity. But look, Broncos country, there's a lot of changes coming with this team. There are already some changes that happened from a personnel standpoint on the Broncos coaching staff last week and heading into this week. We'll break all that down here on today's brand new episode of Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks. And as you all know, Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports done right. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. We are the quickest and the most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares are marked with red demons or green goblins that get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Scholes, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names inside the Prize Picks community each and every week. They even offer injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. On top of that, make sure you get involved with the action over there at Prize Picks. Check it out by going to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100.
There have been some shakeups in the Denver Broncos coaching staff over the last handful of days, as well as the front office a little bit. Some interesting things happening. The Broncos finally got a Cody in the front office, but Cody Roark still bringing the heat from here. And Broncos country, Cody and I are super excited to be able to jump into this offseason together with you. And we can't thank you enough for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Free and available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as the show on YouTube, where you can jump in the comment section and let us know, hey, let's know your thoughts on the Chiefs winning their second Super Bowl in a row, third in the last 5 years. Really a tough time to be a Denver Broncos fan, Cody. Obviously, we'll always have Super Bowl 50. And of course, there's Super Bowl 32, 33. We all know that. But man, it's tough to... It's kind of like when you open the first gift at Christmas, you got siblings or whatever. You open the first gift and you really love it. And then your sibling opens like 2 gifts in a row and you're like super jealous. Like, what the heck, man? When do I get to open another gift? It's like, that's the Broncos right now. They're waiting to open that gift. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's any gifts under the tree right now for the Broncos. It's just, it's the Kansas City Chiefs are having all the fun, but the Broncos have to build something, and they're building on the coaching staff. We've seen a number of coaches depart, no longer any holdovers from the previous regimes. This is an entirely Sean Payton staff after the last couple weeks of coaching movement.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surprising, to be honest with you. We knew that Christian Parker this offseason was going to get interest. He interviewed for 2 different spots, Green Bay, the New England Patriots as well, for a defensive coordinator job. And we all thought, okay, hey, like there's a real chance CP, he departs for a gig in terms of being a DC, like rightfully deserved. He's been a guy who's been a young rising star, rising name inside the coaching ranks amongst the NFL. But then all of a sudden, you get the notification that Christian Parker, he's leaving the Broncos to reunite with guess who? Vic Fangio, who's taken over in Philadelphia. Vic's the DC there. Christian Parker is getting a promotion. He's not going to be coaching defensive backs. He's going to be the passing game coordinator under Vic Fangio. So obviously for Vic, who saw a lot of potential in him when he was here in Denver, that got him plucked from the Green Bay Packers, brought over to Denver, and you've seen the work that he's done from a developmental standpoint. CP is a big loss here for the Broncos. But on top of that, Sayre, I also kind of wrote about this on milehighsports.com. I kind of talked about, hey, well, now that CP is departing, you're going to have to get the hire of defensive backs coach. You have to get it right. It has to be a good name. It has to just be something that's going to make sense. And man, did they get in my opinion, on paper, a home run hire in this regard? Jim Leonhard coming over to coach the secondary here for the Denver Broncos going forward. And some people may or may not know Jim Leonhard, but look, this is a guy who played 10 years in the league. He played 1 season for the Broncos back in 2012. And when he got into coaching, he really quickly became a hot name, right? He started out as a DB coach at Wisconsin. And then all of a sudden, the next year, got promoted to defensive coordinator. and he led one of the top defenses in the nation and coached it and was one of those rising names there. Took over as the interim head coach for that program in 2022. And then I think he was almost set to take Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator job last year, if I'm not mistaken, before he pulled out. He had surgery, I think, and then he served as an analyst for Illinois. To me, on paper, Jim Leonhard is a fantastic hire for defensive backs coach. And this has all the makings and all the potential for a potential future defensive coordinator role, maybe with the Broncos.
It really does. I mean, I was so excited about this. I mean, watching a lot of Big Ten football the last handful of years. Obviously, I mean, I'm an Iowa guy. If anybody's listened to the show, you know I'm an Iowa Hawkeyes guy. Jim Leonhard coaching at Wisconsin there for a long, playing at Wisconsin. I mean, this is a guy that I couldn't even believe he was still available. I figured he was certainly hired away for some other job somewhere, and it kind of felt weird. Like I felt Jim Leonhard is already climbing up enough through the coaching ranks that, I mean, he wasn't necessarily going to be a defensive backs coach at the NFL. There was a lot of rumors that he could get NFL defensive coordinator positions or college football head coaching positions. So I don't know if there's a disconnect between the perception of Jim Leonhard and what NFL people think of Jim Leonhard, but I think this is a big, big deal for the Denver Broncos. You mentioned it. They had to get this hire right after losing Christian Parker, who's been tremendous with player development. Now you get a guy in Jim Leonhard who they crank out a lot of NFL guys there at Wisconsin, and he was part of a lot of really good players getting to the NFL, including I know Fionn Hicks on the Denver Broncos was a guy that we evaluated and talked on this show. Like Jim Leonhard knows how to coach these guys up to play in this style of defense that they want to do. Man to man. Yep. So I really like this move, and I think it's a big one for the Denver Broncos. Defensively, like you said, could be a future DC there, depending on whatever happens with Vance Joseph down the line. But what about on the offensive side of the ball, Cody? I feel like we got some interesting news there with Pete Carmichael now joining the staff. I mean, this is the old cast of characters, right, from the New Orleans Saints. They're all now basically in Denver. We're just waiting for Taysom Hill to join the team at some point. That'll be the cherry on top of all this. But Pete Carmichael joining the staff. What do you think of this move? I like having this brain trust back together.
Yeah, look, you have familiarity with guys, and I think people are like, oh, no, the Denver Saints are now going to be a thing. Well, I think you can also make a comparison to the New Orleans Broncos. All the Broncos ties are now in New Orleans there. We'll focus on that maybe another day here. But Carmichael, obviously, from all of Sean Payton's tenure in New Orleans, was with Pete Carmichael. Like, those guys worked together. He came in 2006 when Payton took over as the job. Like, it's going to be a senior role offensively here for him. And maybe I think that's going to help Payton with the operation. Like Payton acknowledged that, hey, I've got to be better in the play calling side of things. I've got to be better in a lot of areas, got to clean things up. How do you do that? You bring in guys that you know can help you with that, that know how you want things coached. And I don't think that's an indictment on Joe Lombardi in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's very, very interesting. You're bringing in a guy there. How does that structure maybe look, right? Getting it back to what Sean Payton's offense truly is, I think, is the goal for this organization going into 2024. I think it's a good move there here for the Broncos. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. You were in Disney World. I had a lot of stuff in life going on, obviously. So we had recorded 2 weeks worth of episodes there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting hire here for Denver. And, I think they're going to have to make one more hire here as well going forward. Like, who's going to replace Marcus Dixon? He obviously was defensive line coach, been a terrific coach for them. And now he's departing for the Minnesota Vikings. Sean Payton could have blocked it, but allowed him to go get an opportunity elsewhere. I'm trying to think, are there any New Orleans Saints ties, former defensive line coaches that could be coming to Denver now that Marcus Dixon has parted ways, obviously, with the team? That's going to be another interesting one to follow.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody out there, right? Or at least maybe another former player. I know there's a lot of guys in Denver who know J.J. Watt. I don't know what he's up to these days. He's got enough money to maybe take a coaching gig, if he wants
Jared
to get
Allen,
back close to the game. Jared Allen, he's been around the Broncos facility, so you never know. I mean, somebody could come in and maybe be a surprise pickup. I wanted to quickly touch on this too, Cody, because a guy named Cody Rager, I have no idea.
I think it's Rager, yeah.
Rager, Cody Rager, very close to Cody Roark, obviously. So we know it's going to be good. The Denver Broncos' new vice president of player personnel. So a front office shakeup, another former Saint coming to Denver to join the front office. Sounds like he's going to be working very, very closely with general manager George Payton. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. Can't help but wonder if George Payton is on the hot seat a little bit, if Cody if he could be maybe this next general manager in waiting, how much does he help with the NFL draft this year? I'm fascinated by this particular move, and I think it could be a big one for the Broncos offseason.
Be very curious to see how it goes. I got excited for a minute because my phone called and it was Sean Payton, and he thought I was Cody Rager. Like, he's like, oh, wrong Cody. So the little miscommunication there. I almost got hired as the VP of player personnel, but I digress. I did not get the promotion there that maybe I would have looked forward to and bring a new insight here to Locked On Broncos. But unfortunately, we have to talk about some bad news here as the Kansas City Chiefs have won Super Bowl 58. We'll dive deeper into that. And we'll talk about maybe what we learned and some of the narratives coming out of that game, how it impacts the Broncos going into 2024. You're going to get all that and much more in today's brand new episode of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at DoorDash. And what a football game that was. But as usual, commercials stole the show in my book. DoorDash went all out for game day, and DoorDash stuff from all the ads to one lucky winner, cars, snacks, and even tax software. And somehow they pulled it off. And I'm a little bummed I didn't win, but you got to hand it to them. They did a really good job. It was one heck of a delivery. DoorDash is the all-in-one app for your everyday needs, from restaurants and groceries to flowers and gifts, especially with Valentine's Day coming up. So next time you're running low on dinner ideas, pet supplies, or just time, you can get so much more than you realize delivered all directly to your doorstep. If you didn't have a chance to hit the grocery store last weekend after all the big game commotions, or maybe your bar cart has been mysteriously cleared out, stock back up for the week ahead with delivery from DoorDash. Whatever watch party or anything party you've got coming up, get it delivered with DoorDash. Football season may be over, but we're in the thick of basketball games this school year, and let's face it, winter, and I can think of a million reasons daily to order DoorDash. So hop on the app and make your day a little easier. Get dinner tonight for groceries for the week, or a consolation prize for your sad friends in San Francisco, all on DoorDash. DoorDash, your door to more. Head to the DoorDash app to get everything you need delivered. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 58, how it impacts the Broncos from the perspective of where does Denver go from here, especially now that Kansas City has won yet another Super Bowl. Want to say thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day every single day. Sayre and I will have you covered every single day, every step of the way, everything that you need to know about the offseason, moves being made in free agency, the NFL Scout and Combine, the NFL Draft, OTAs, and training camp, the regular season. This is the place to be every single day, all year long. So thank you so much for making us part of your team, your routine every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on what's going on with the Broncos. Sayre, Super Bowl 58 ended disappointing, I think, for everybody in Broncos country. Now, unfortunately, I did see on social media there were some Broncos fans that were rooting for the Chiefs, which I don't think that makes you a Broncos fan anymore. I think that's like an automatic revocation of your Broncos fan card, according to late great owner Pat Bowlen. So, I mean, if Pat Bowlen said, hey, nobody ever roots for a division rival, there's that. But the 49ers, I just feel like in this game, and we're going to use this a little bit as a vent session here, I felt like San Francisco at one point this season, if they could play the way that we've known them to play, they look unbeatable. But man, I was disappointed. I felt like Kyle Shanahan. I felt like that offense in general, they laid a massive egg against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. When they early on, they really had an opportunity to get up big on them, and they couldn't capitalize on it.
Yeah, they did. It was disappointing all around, right? I mean, typically against the Kansas City Chiefs, you see teams just get in their own heads. They can't even take advantage of mistakes. I saw a graphic pop up on the screen at one point later in the game that said Kansas City had fumbled the ball 4 times. And I thought to myself, dang, they fumbled the ball 4 times, and we're in this close of a game against the San Francisco 49ers. This is the team that had the biggest point differential in the NFL all season up until the last week when you started your backup court. I mean, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. And I know that the Chiefs have a really good defense. I know that defense kind of carried them throughout the season. But you're right. It was a massive egg laid by this 49ers team. And unfortunately, that has kind of become the story of Kyle Shanahan in the Super Bowl, hasn't it? I mean, obviously, he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash on Kyle Shanahan. You got to get to the Super Bowl, and it takes a great coach to get there. But, man, in the Super Bowl, what was the story in the 28-3 game? Went away from your offensive identity against the Chiefs the first time back in that 2019-2020 season. It was the 49ers offense that let the team down late in the game. And here we are once again, the 2023-24 season. The offense for the 49ers unable to even reach the 20-point mark. I mean, it's a shame, man. It really is. And you hate to see it for not just Kyle Shanahan, but also, Christian McCaffrey. Would have been cool to see those legacies get the job done for fans in Broncos country. And I'm with you, Cody. I mean, man, my goodness, if a Broncos fan is out there rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs, I let my daughter cheer for any time Taylor Swift was on the screen. That's as close as we're getting to rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs in this household. All right. And we lay down that law. So I'm with you, man. I don't understand it. I'm very confused by the whole game. Unfortunately, I think we kind of expected this outcome, didn't we? The Chiefs coming away in the end, figuring out a way to get it done.
Yeah, here's the thing as well, and I think you also have to give credit where credit is due. What Patrick Mahomes is able to do, like he turned it on when he needed to, and he wasn't getting much help really in that game early on. Like guys were not being able to get open outside of some pick plays. There was one really big deep ball downfield that was caught, but then Isaiah Pacheco fumbles it on the very next play, and San Francisco unfortunately couldn't capitalize on that opportunity there. But he just, when it's time to go, when it's clutch time, he locks in, he zeroes in, and he's an incredible player. And look, you have to give credit where credit is due in that situation there. The Chiefs, obviously, 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. Like this is, I think, the first time since the New England Patriots. Like that's how long it's been, I think. And that was when they first won it with Brady. And then prior to that, I think it was when John Elway and the Broncos went 97, 98. So this is obviously a big accomplishment for the Chiefs. Denver's going to be in the AFC West next year. I said it and I tweeted on social media after the game. Maybe the only positive that can come out of this, let's just say, okay, hey, they won the Super Bowl. You know how hard it is to go back to back. You know how hard it is to be in a position to go back to back to back. It's never been done before. My thought process here, the only positive takeaway that could happen from this is if Andy Reid retires, Travis Kelce retires. If they retire after this, that kind of opens things up a little bit here for the Denver Broncos. Maybe Steve Spagnuolo takes over as the head coach, but it's not Andy Reid. So for me, I feel like that would be an interesting positive, maybe out of a negative situation. I'm not sure how you feel about it.
Yeah, we need these guys to start getting up out of there, right? I mean, that's kind of what Chiefs fans felt about the Broncos with John Elway, and that he tortured them into his
Oh,
late 30s, right? So, I mean, it's the same deal, right? It's the same type of deal. This is retribution, right, for Kansas City fans having to endure John Elway's entire career with the Broncos, where the Broncos were, I mean, winning AFC championship after AFC championship. Of course, they didn't win 3 out of 5 Super Bowls early in John's career, but I mean the torture was the same. As long as Elway was in Denver, he was torturing the Chiefs. And then he did it the same thing when he came back to the front office. Like he is their nightmare. He is their
yeah.
kryptonite. But for the Denver Broncos now, like what can we even do, Cody? I mean, we can be frustrated by this, we can be upset by this, we can be like, okay, how do this is torture, like this is pain, this is a nightmare, and it is. But at the same time, it's kind of like, have we not become numb a little bit to the Chiefs winning this much? I mean, it's like, what are
Yeah.
we even supposed to do? With you're beating the dead horse in terms of Broncos fans right now. This is as low of a low point as I think you could possibly get as a Broncos fan.
Well, on top of that, to make matters worse, you mentioned John Elway. They had him hand the Lombardi Trophy to the Chiefs and to Patrick Mahomes and him. Like, what was that the NFL's idea, or was John on board with it, or was John there hoping he could do that for Kyle Shanahan and Christian McCaffrey? Like, to me, I don't know. Maybe that makes sense. Like, I just felt like it was the weirdest thing to see, and it was kind of like, wait, John Elway, like beloved. You think of the Denver Broncos, you think of John Elway. John Elway hates the Chiefs too, and it's like, oh, he's giving them the Lombardi Trophy. That to me was weird. I don't think have they done that in the past? I can't recall where they've had like a former historic player just hand them the Lombardi Trophy. Is it always Roger Goodell handing it to him or somebody like I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it was
I've never
just a,
seen
a
it.
recency bias thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. It's disgusting. I mean, those pictures. Do you think Kansas City Chiefs fans are ever going to let Broncos country live that one down, Cody? I mean, they're going to be memeing that picture and the video footage of Elway bringing the trophy to the Chiefs. I mean, that's going to be it's the icing on the cake for Kansas City fans. Look, it's
Ugh.
a great time to be a Kansas City fan right now. You got all the love from the most popular fan base in the entire world, Taylor Swift's fans. They've jumped on your bandwagon. John Elway's handing you trophies. Patrick Mahomes is unbeatable.
We're
All
living in
this
hell
and
right
that.
now.
I mean, I was, you said, whose idea was it, Cody? I was going to say Satan. That's the only one that I can think of. So I don't
Oh,
know, but man, it's torturous right now. And look, hey, the Broncos are kind of back to square one, aren't they? So it's really not like I hate the fact that I pull open YouTube and the algorithm has a Broncos Super Bowl documentary on there. No offense to whoever made that. It just sucks to see. It's like that's all we have right now is memories. And you open up Twitter, it's John Elway handing the trophy over. I mean, it sucks. And so Broncos country, hey, we're in this for the long haul this offseason. And then going forward, it is going to be a grind to get anywhere near back to a level to which this team is going to be able to even, I don't know, wipe the dust off Kansas City's feet at this point. That's where and they beat the Chiefs this past year. But look, I don't know. Does it even matter at this point, Cody? I don't know.
It's a great question here. And look, you can't run away with it. The challenge is inside the AFC West. Broncos country, this team, they're going to have a lot of ammunition. Denver is going to have a lot of ammunition, a lot of motivation, because what better way to knock off the champs than by trying to compete and win for the division? Denver's going to have to do a lot of things in order to do that. We're not saying that's going to be what they're doing in 2024, but you can't run away from that challenge. And I don't think that the Broncos will do that, despite how redundant it has become to see Kansas City win the division and win Super Bowls and be in the conversation. I mean, all AFC every year is an AFC championship game for Patrick Mahomes since he's been in the league. That to me is a frustrating pain point here. And look, Broncos country, we get it, but you can't run from that challenge. You got to face it head on. The Broncos plan to do just that. We'll continue our position review series here this week. If you're an everyday listener to Locked On Broncos, tomorrow we're going to focus on the Broncos linebacker position. We're going to look at 2023 in review at inside linebacker. We're going to take a look at some of the biggest questions surrounding the position this offseason, and we're going to give our forecast potential changes on the horizon. You'll get that much more in tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.